Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a research request that really connects some dots across millennia. It's quite profound, actually.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
We're looking at an interpretation that links to, well, seemingly very different biblical stories.
Right. You've got the court drama of Esther, Haman's plot.
And then you have the sweeping, high-stakes prophecy in the book of Revelation, thousands of years apart.
But the core idea we're exploring today, based on our sources, is that these aren't just separate stories with maybe some thematic echoes.
No, not at all. The analysis claims Haman's plot to wipe out the Jewish people is, in fact, a precise, symbolic blueprint, like a detailed rehearsal.
A blueprint for what exactly?
For Satan's final, end-time plan to destroy God's people across the globe. It's seen as a shadow play revealing the exact tactics.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to unpack this interpretation, pull out those symbolic connections.
We'll be looking at patterns of conflict, power structures, use of law,
And ultimately, how this interpretation sees a path to redemption woven through both narratives, connecting ancient Susa to what the sources call the last one ear.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, that term last one ear, it's specific terminology from the source material.
What does it signify in this context?
It's used to denote that final prophetic period. Think the final week of years from Daniel 9.27, the climax of history, really.
So ear is like a unit of prophetic time here.
That's how the source interprets it, yeah. Marking that final, intense struggle. And the details in Esther, the people, the timing, the decrees, they're seen as deliberate symbols teaching us about this final period.
Fascinating. Okay, let's dive in. Section 1, establishing the symbolic adversaries. We have to start with Haman.
Haman and Satan. That's the core parallel the source draws right away.
What's the basis for that comparison?
It starts with worship, or rather, the refusal to worship. Remember Esther 3? Haman is furious because Mordecai won't bow down to him.
It's more than just disrespect for Haman. It's a challenge to his authority, his status.
Exactly. And this consuming rage, this drive to annihilate not just Mordecai, but all his people because of this refusal. The source sees Haman acting as a perfect stand-in for Satan.
Satan, the original accuser, demanding worship, seeking to destroy God's loyal followers.
Right. But then there's the crucial link to Revelation, which is about how Haman gets the power to act.
Because Haman himself doesn't have the inherent authority to order genocide, does he?
No, he's powerful within the court, but he's not the sovereign. He has to manipulate the system. He needs King Ahasuerus.
He needs the king's legal authority, the royal seal, the empire's machinery to carry out his plan. He basically borrows the king's power.
He does. Esther 3.11 shows him getting the king's signet ring. That's the delegated authority.
Yeah.
And this is where the parallel to Revelation 13 becomes so strong.
Talk us through that Revelation connection.
Revelation 13.2 and 13.4 are very clear. The dragon who represents Satan gives the beast its power, its throne, and great authority. It's the same structure.
So, just like Haman needed Ahasuerus, Satan needs a proxy, this entity called the beast, to enforce his will on earth. It's power by delegation.
Precisely. The ultimate source of the destructive impulse isn't the one directly wielding the final earthly power.
Okay, so we have Haman as a symbol for Satan, and the beast as the earthly power structure executing the plan. But the sources go even further with Ahasuerus, don't they?
They do. King Ahasuerus, the ultimate political authority in Esther's story, gets symbolically linked to the red beast in Revelation 17.3.
The red beast, representing the global political machine, the governmental power itself.
That's the idea, the structure that can be manipulated. But then there's another layer regarding Haman's role within that system.
This is the harlot of Babylon connection you mentioned.
Yes, it's an interesting symbolic equation. Haman, as the manipulator using the political power for genocide, is equated with the harlot of Babylon.
The one seen riding the red beast in Revelation 17.
That's the one. The harlot here symbolizes the corrupting influence, maybe a false religious system or a perversion of justice, that uses the raw political power, the red beast, Ahasuerus, to attack God's people.
So the political structure is the vehicle, but Haman, or the harlot system, is steering it towards destruction.
You could put it that way. Satan is the ultimate source. The harlot Haman is the corrupting influence within the system, and the red beast Ahasuerus is the political machinery being used.
And the sources see this pattern throughout history.
Yes, they connect it back to Daniel 7.1 Hanny, the four great beasts representing earthly kingdoms. It suggests this dynamic of earthly power being vulnerable to manipulation by adversaries is ancient. The system allows for it.
Okay, the power structure is laid out. Now let's look at how Haman justifies his plan to the king. His accusation in Esther 3 seems almost like a template.
It really is a classic strategy for persecution. Look at what he says in Esther 3:8 to 9.
Let's break it down. He says there's this scattered group of people.
Dispersed, different, implicitly disloyal, or at least separate.
Their laws are different from everyone else's.
A cultural threat. They don't fit in.
And, crucially, they do not keep the king's laws.
Which frames them as rebels,
Yeah.
treasonous even, and then the clincher.
It is not profitable for the king to let them remain. Tolerating them is bad for business, bad for the kingdom.
And he even puts his money where his mouth is, offering that enormous sum, 10,000 talents of silver, to fund the whole operation. It sweetens the deal for the king.
It's a powerful accusation. They're different, disobedient, and economically disadvantageous. How does this mirror Satan's role?
Perfectly. Satan is consistently portrayed as the accuser. The source points to Job chapter 1 and 2.
Right. Satan doesn't accuse Job of sinning initially.
No, he accuses Job of having ulterior motives. Essentially, he only serves you, God, because you protect him and make him rich.
Conditional piety. Take away the blessings and his faith will crumble.
Exactly. Satan accuses God's protection as the only reason for loyalty. And in the end-time scenario, the source suggests Satan accuses God's people again, trying to force them into failure, into worshiping the beast to prove his point.
Which brings us to a really difficult theological point. If God is good, why does he permit this? The idea of divine permission for destruction.
It's a central challenge, and the sources tackle it head-on. The argument is that God does permit Satan limited authority. We see it with Job. God sets boundaries, but allows Satan to test him.
Limited authority, but why allow it at all, especially on a global scale, like in Revelation?
The source argues it's a necessary part of the plan to ultimately eradicate sin from creation. It cites 1 John 3:8, the Son of God came to destroy the devil's works.
How does allowing destruction achieve that?
To finalize the judgment against sin and Satan, the argument goes, the principle of evil must be allowed to run its course, to fully demonstrate its destructive nature within set limits. It's like letting the prosecution present its full case.
So the evil reveals itself completely, justifying its final removal.
That's the rationale presented. The permission is granted to ultimately prove God's justice in condemning evil by letting its full implications become undeniable.
And in the end times, this permission has a specific duration.
Yes. Revelation 13:5 and 7 mention 42 months. That's the period Satan's given power to wage war against the saints and, to some extent, overcome them physically.
3.5 years. That's the window for this first decree of death.
A fixed period. Devastating but finite. It's contained within God's larger plan.
Let's talk more about that timing. Section 2, the timeline of annihilation, the decree of death. The dates in Esther seem really specific.
Extremely specific, and the source sees profound symbolism in them. The decree to destroy, kill, and annihilate all Jews.
Young and old, women and children, seize their property.
It's issued on the 13th day of the first month, Nisan, but the execution date is set way later.
For the 13th day of the 12th month, Adar, almost a full year later. Why such a long delay?
The delay itself is significant, building dread. But the method of choosing that date is key. Haman casts the lot.
Right, Esther 3.7. That's where the festival of Purim gets its name.
Exactly. And the source focuses intensely on the result of that lot, selecting the 12th month, Adar, the last month of the year.
How is that symbolically interpreted?
This act of selecting the final month, the appointed time for destruction, is seen as representing the last one year.
So the lot falling on the 12th month symbolizes God appointing the final period of intense conflict described in Daniel's final week of years.
That's the connection the source makes. Casting the lot for the last month mirrors the divine appointment of the last period of history's climax. It underscores that this final struggle is fixed, predetermined.
And the death warrant set for that specific day, the 13th of Adar, becomes symbolic of the culmination of Satan's final push.
His last desperate gamble, which fits perfectly with Satan's mindset during this period.
What is that mindset?
Revelation 12:1 describes it. Great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time.
That short time is the last 1 year. He's acting out of desperation.
Exactly. He knows the clock is ticking down. His goal is total annihilation of the faithful before Christ's final intervention. That urgency makes his methods all-encompassing.
And the scope of Haman's plot also mirrors the end times.
Absolutely. Haman didn't target Jews in one city. He aimed for every single Jew across all 127 provinces of Ahasuerus' empire, a vast territory.
From India to Ethiopia, basically.
Right. And this serves as the historical prototype for the beast's authority in the last one year. Revelation 13.7 says the beast gets authority over every tribe, people, tongue, and nation.
So it's not a localized persecution, it's global.
A worldwide attempt to wipe out everyone who remains faithful to God.
It sounds like an attack on all humanity, but you mentioned the target is actually very specific. Who is Satan really after?
This is critical. The source argues Satan isn't particularly bothered by people who are already rebellious or indifferent to God. 2 Corinthians 4.4 talks about the God of this age blinding the minds of unbelievers.
They're already under his influence, in a sense.
Right, so his focus, his wrath, is directed exclusively at those who worship God alone, keep the commandments, and refuse the mark of the beast.
They are the ones resisting his authority, but why are they such a threat? If he manages to kill them, doesn't he win?
But his goal isn't just their physical death. It's deeper. It's about the law itself.
How so?
Satan wants to prevent the truthfulness and the righteousness of God's commandments from being proven. He wants to stop them from being established as the standard for the final judgment.
Proven how?
Proven by being kept. If the saints, empowered by God, actually live out the commandments faithfully, even under duress, they provide living evidence that the law is good and possible to follow with divine help.
And if they compromise or are corrupted or die having failed the test?
Then they can't provide that crucial testimony. Satan's accusation that the law is impossible and unjust would seem validated. Corrupting them is a form of killing them too, spiritually.
So the persecution is fundamentally a test designed to break their fidelity, to force compromise.
Exactly. He desperately needs to prevent a group of people from successfully demonstrating the righteousness of God's law, because their success seals his judgment. The whole cosmic trial hinges on their faithfulness.
That completely reframes the purpose of the suffering. It's not just about survival, it's about vindicating God's standard. Which leads us into Section 3, the tools of tyranny. How does the adversary enforce this worldwide? King's law versus beast's law.
The method is consistent. Use human law to oppose God's law. Force a choice.
Like Nebuchadnezzar with the golden statue. Obey the king's decree or face the furnace.
A perfect example from Daniel 3. Haman does the same. He uses Ahasuerus' legal system to target those whose ultimate loyalty isn't to the king's decree, but to God's principles, like Mordecai's refusal to bow.
Haman created a law where compliance meant violating conscience for Mordecai and the Jews.
And that's the precise model for the last one year. Satan, through the beast, institutes the law of the beast,
which enforces worship of the beast's image according to Revelation 13.15.
Yes. Refusal means death. It's the ultimate loyalty test, pitting physical survival directly against faithfulness to God.
And it's not just a death threat. There's that economic element, too, the mark of the beast.
Right, Revelation 13.17. This law makes it impossible to function in society, buy or sell, without the mark, the name, or the number 6666.
That's total control. It targets basic survival needs. Food, shelter, work.
It applies maximum pressure. The goal is to force compliance by making resistance seem utterly impractical, leading to starvation or destitution.
So just like Haman offered the king silver to make annihilation seem profitable for the state.
The beast's system makes compromise seem profitable, or at least necessary for survival for the individual.
It plays on fear. Satan is betting that everyone has a price, essentially.
He's betting on pure self-preservation. It echoes his argument about Job in Job 2.4, skin for skin. All that a man has, he will give for his life. He fundamentally believes everyone will choose physical life over spiritual integrity when pushed to the absolute limit.
A cynical view of humanity. But the sources argue there's a force stronger than that fear.
Yes, the counter-argument is love. Not just any love, but a love for God that is, as the Song of Solomon 8.6 says, strong as death.
A love that overcomes the fear of dying.
An unshakable commitment. This creates an opposition that doesn't fear the physical consequences. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walking towards the furnace.
Or the martyrs in Revelation 12.11 who love not their lives unto the death.
Their love for God and His truth was greater than their instinct for self-preservation. That's the force Satan misunderstands or underestimates.
So the ultimate stakes become incredibly stark, don't they?
Binary and eternal. What are the outcomes?
Path 1. Refuse the beast's law and worship. The consequence.
Physical death. But, as Jesus said in Matthew 10.28, they can only kill the body, not the soul or spirit. In this context, physical death becomes the ultimate act of faithful testimony.
Path 2. Submit to the beast. Take the mark. Worship the image. The consequence.
Temporary physical survival, perhaps. But ultimately, The death of both body and soul in the lake of fire, as warned in Matthew 10:37 and Revelation 16:2. You gain the world, lose your soul.
So what the world sees as defeat the martyr's death is actually their victory in proving the law's truth. And what looks like survival is eternal defeat.
The value system is completely inverted from the worldly perspective. Their death is the ultimate proof, securing the verdict against the adversary.
Okay, under Haman's initial decree, the situation looked utterly hopeless for the Jews. This brings us to section 4, the reversal. How does the turnaround in Esther's story blueprint the final reversal? Esther, the cross, and the new order.
The whole thing pivots on Esther's intercession in chapter 7. The sources stress the immense risk she took.
Right, approaching the king uninvited was potentially a death sentence itself. Esther 4.16.
Her famous line, "If I perish, I perish," shows she's willing to die for her people. She makes a sacrificial choice.
And by stepping forward, risking everything, she does what?
She pleads for her life and the life of her people, and in doing so, she exposes Haman. She names him as the enemy right there in front of the king.
The architect of the plot is revealed, and the immediate result is dramatic.
Haman's swift downfall, specifically being hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Esther 7:10.
And the source sees huge symbolism here.
Immense symbolism. Haman hanged on his own instrument of death is directly paralleled with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
How so? The cross was an instrument of curse.
Exactly. Galatians 3:13 talks about Christ becoming a curse for us. The cross was meant for humiliation and death. But in God's plan, that very instrument of curse became the means by which Satan, the ruler of this world, was judged and cast out, as Jesus said in John 12:31.
So Haman's end on the gallows mirrors Satan's judgment being sealed at the cross. The weapon turned back on the perpetrator.
That's the interpretation. The historical event prefigures the cosmic one, and notice what happens immediately after Haman is dealt with.
The power shifts instantly.
Right. Mordecai, who is marked for death, is suddenly elevated. He gets Haman's position, the royal robes, the king's signet ring. Esther 8:15.
Complete reversal of fortunes.
And this symbolizes Christ's ascension. After his resurrection and the defeat of Satan's power at the cross, he inherits all authority. As for Peter 3:22 says, angels, authorities, and powers are subject to him. The faithful servant receives the dominion lost by the wicked one.
No, the analysis doesn't just see Esther as a symbol of Christ, right? She also represents something else.
There's a dual symbolism. Yes, she represents Christ in her willingness to face death sacrificially. But she also symbolizes the faithful community, the bride, the church.
How does she symbolize the church?
In her role as the one who, through her willingness to die, confirms the truth and brings about the judgment on the adversary. The final generation of faithful saints facing the beast's decree similarly finalize Satan's judgment through their unwavering loyalty.
And this connects her to the imagery in Revelation 12.
Directly, to the woman clothed with the sun.
Let's unpack that connection. The woman in Revelation 12.
She represents God's faithful people, Israel, the church who gives birth to the male child, Christ, destined to rule.
And the dragon, Satan, is right there, waiting to devour the child as soon as it's born. Revelation 12.4.
Yes. This shows the conflict is ancient, ongoing. Haman's plot wasn't unique. It was just one manifestation of the dragon's age-old attempt to destroy the promised seed and his followers. Esther's story is one episode in that larger cosmic war.
So the sources are saying this whole sequence, Haman's rise, his plot, Esther's brave intervention, the reversal wasn't just a series of fortunate events or clever human maneuvering.
Not according to this interpretation. It argues this was all part of God's predetermined plan, established before creation, citing verses like Isaiah 46:10, declaring the end from the beginning.
That raises a tough question, though. If it's all predetermined, what about free will? And how can God be just if he uses wicked figures like Haman, symbolizing Satan as instruments in his plan?
That's a core tension. The sources seem to handle it by emphasizing God's sovereignty over outcomes, even while individuals make their own choices. Proverbs 16:4 is cited. The Lord has made all for himself, yes, even the wicked for the day of doom.
Meaning, God knows the choices the wicked will make.
And incorporates those choices into his larger purpose. Satan's destructive actions become the necessary crucible, the test, that allows the faithfulness of God's people to be proven and demonstrated.
So the adversary's evil is permitted within set boundaries, like the 42 months, precisely to fulfill the conditions necessary to abolish sin justly and permanently.
That appears to be the theological argument. It's complex, but it aims to uphold both God's justice and his ultimate control in bringing about redemption.
Okay. Haman's judgment leads to Mordecai's empowerment, which enables a new decree. This takes us to Section 5, the two decrees and the covenants of life. The legal framework shifts.
It had to. The reversal needed a legal basis. We start with the first decree from Haman.
The death warrant in Esther 3.13. How is that viewed symbolically?
As a perfect representation of the first covenant, the law given at Sinai, written on stone.
But why is the law of God called a law of death here? It's holy and good.
Because, the argument goes, fallen humanity in its own strength could not keep it. Romans 3.19 says the law was given to show sin, to make everyone accountable before God. It revealed the standard, but didn't provide the power to meet it.
So it exposed failure and brought condemnation.
Yes. 2 Corinthians 3 even calls it the ministration of death. Galatians 3 compares it to a schoolmaster, showing us our need for something more. It revealed sin, pointed out the path to death through disobedience, but couldn't give life.
The flaw wasn't the law, but human inability. That's crucial. So when Mordecai gets the authority,
He issues the second decree. Now, under Persian law, the first decree couldn't just be canceled. It was irrevocable.
a fascinating detail. So what did the second decree do?
It didn't annul the first one. It counteracted it. Esther 8.1 and 9.1-2 show it gave the Jews the explicit right to gather, defend themselves, and destroy anyone who tried to attack them on that appointed 13th day of Adar.
It armed them. It gave them the legal right to fight back, a decree of life and self-defense.
Exactly. And this dual decree system maps perfectly onto the two covenants.
How so? The second decree represents the new covenant.
Precisely. The new covenant, sealed by Christ's blood, Luke 22.20, isn't written on external stones, but internally on the heart by the Holy Spirit. 2 Corinthians 3.3 makes that contrast.
And this internal writing transforms the law.
It transforms our relationship to the law.
Yeah.
It turns the law that brought death, because we couldn't keep it, into the law of the Spirit of life, Romans 8.1.
Because the new covenant provides the power to obey.
Yes, that's the promise of Jeremiah 31. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. The indwelling Spirit gives believers the ability to conquer sin in a way the Old Covenant couldn't bestow. Galatians 5.18. If you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the condemning power of the law.
So grace empowers obedience. It doesn't abolish the standard.
Exactly. But the sources add a crucial point here. This empowerment isn't passive. It comes with a mandate.
A mandate to fight, even under the new covenant.
Yes, a mandate for spiritual warfare. The sources insist that even though saved by grace, believers must actively engage in overcoming sin. Romans 8.13 is stark. If by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live.
So the Jews physically fighting their attackers under the second decree is a metaphor.
For the spiritual battle every believer must wage. The source warns, citing 1 Corinthians 9.27, that if believers don't exercise self-control and obey the Spirit, they risk being disqualified, judged alongside the enemies.
That's a challenging idea, that salvation requires this active participation, this fight, and failure has consequences even for believers.
It emphasizes that the new covenant enables the very thing Satan claims is impossible. Genuine, sustained obedience that proves God's law is righteous. This demonstration has to be real, lived out.
It vindicates God's character and his law. Okay, let's move to the final section. Section 6, Agents of Victory and the Final Consummation. Who carries out this second decree in the end times?
The victory requires empowered agents. We see this paradox. During the 42 months, God permits Satan to physically harm some saints, first decree in action. But simultaneously, God empowers other saints to actively fight back and defeat Satan's forces, second decree in action. This clash defines the last one heir.
And who are the primary agents leading this counteroffensive?
The sources point directly to the two witnesses described in Revelation 11.
They preach for 12,260 days, the same 42 months often depicted in sackcloth.
Right, symbolizing mourning and repentance. But crucially, they aren't passive victims. They are given incredible divine power.
What kind of power?
Revelation 11.56 is explicit. Fire comes from their mouths to destroy their enemies. They can shut up the heavens so it doesn't rain, turn water into blood, and strike the earth with plagues as often as they wish.
That's serious firepower. They sound like agents of judgment.
They are the embodiment of the second decree in action. They are actively fighting and dismantling the beast's power during the very time the beast has its delegated authority.
So their actions mirror the Jews defending themselves and destroying their enemies on the 13th of Adar.
Precisely. It's the authorized, empowered counterattack. And alongside them, you have the 144,000 mentioned in Revelation 7 and 14.
Who are they?
They're described as the first fruits, sealed by God, characterized by their absolute purity and unwavering faithfulness. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes and are undefiled by the corrupt world system.
And their role.
Their perfect fidelity and testimony are seen as breaking the spiritual power of the beast. They provide that irrefutable human evidence that God's law can be kept, fulfilling that crucial condition we discussed.
And what about those who are killed during this time? The martyrs. We need to reiterate their role isn't failure.
Absolutely not. Their death is a vital part of the victory. Revelation 6.9 speaks of the souls under the altar, slain for the word of God and their testimony.
Their death itself is testimony.
Yes. It proves their love for God was strong as death. It confirms the truthfulness of the commandments they died upholding. Revelation 12.11 says they overcame the dragon by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, because they didn't cling to their own lives. Their martyrdom seals Satan's final judgment.
It's a powerful, if sobering, picture. Okay, this has been incredibly detailed. Let's use this last part to tie it all together. The ultimate purpose of the struggle. The sources lay out a kind of causal chain, right? Explaining why all this had to happen this way.
Yes, it connects everything back to the cross and forward to the final vindication of the law. It argues every step was necessary. Let's walk through it.
Start with the foundation, Christ's sacrifice. If Christ hadn't shed his blood,
Then sin could not be forgiven. Hebrews 9.1 is clear on that. No forgiveness without the shedding of blood. That's step one.
okay. And if sin wasn't forgiven,
Then the Holy Spirit could not indwell believers. Acts 2.38 links repentance and forgiveness to receiving the gift of the Spirit. The Spirit can't reside where sin reigns unatoned.
makes sense. And if the Spirit didn't indwell people,
Then they would lack the power to truly overcome sin. Galatians 5.18 points to the Spirit as the enabling power for righteous living. Without the Spirit, humanity remains bound by the flesh.
right? And if people couldn't overcome sin,
Then the truthfulness and righteousness of God's commandments could never be proven in human experience. Satan's great lie that the law is too hard, unfair, impossible would seem true. Job 2.5 again. Satan bets Job will curse God if afflicted.
which would undermine the law's authority.
Completely. If the law couldn't be proven right and achievable through God's power in his people, then it couldn't stand as the final just standard for judging the universe. John 12.48 says Christ's word will judge. That word, embodied in the law, must be vindicated.
If the standard isn't proven righteous, the basis for condemning Satan and sin itself disappears.
Exactly. The entire process would fail. And so this causal chain shows why both decrees, Haman's death decree, first covenant showing sin, Mordecai's life decree, new covenant empowering obedience, were necessary.
The whole drama, from Esther's court to the final battle, is needed to abolish sin justly and establish God's righteous rule forever.
That's the ultimate purpose described, to complete the created order, eliminate sin from the cosmos, and finalize the judgment on all offenders, all while upholding justice and allowing for genuine choice and faithfulness.
Wow. This has certainly been a deep dive. We've traced this interpretation connecting Haman's historical plot to the ultimate theological drama in Revelation. The core conflict, obedience versus rebellion, true worship versus false, remains the constant battleground.
It's intricate, but the pattern emerges. Haman's manipulation, Esther's risk, Christ's sacrifice which reversed the curse, the empowering new covenant, the final stand of the witnesses and martyrs. It's all presented as one coherent narrative designed to achieve two things: save the faithful by empowering them, and judge the wicked by proving the righteousness of the standard they rejected.
It definitely elevates the story of Esther beyond just a historical account of deliverance. It becomes a key piece of the prophetic puzzle according to these sources, which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to consider.
If this entire vast, century-spanning plan, as interpreted here, ultimately hinges on the ability of Spirit-empowered believers to prove the truth and goodness of God's law through their steadfast obedience, especially when pressured.
What immediate choices in your own life today might be seen as a small but decisive step in that same long-fought spiritual battle for the vindication of God's character and his law?